Hello, Dr. Potter here, helping moms brighten moods and balance hormones so they can worry less and enjoy the magic of motherhood more. And today is such a wonderful day because Shira is here. She is the founder of Tiny Talkers. She is the queen of baby sign language, and she is here to share with us. So, welcome, Shira. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Great. So I would love to hear about Tiny Talkers. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, so I've been doing this for 12 years, I think. And sign language has just kind of always been a big interest to me. As a child, I was always fascinated with sign language. Whenever we had an event that had an interpreter, I always begged my parents to let us, sit behind the interpreters so I could watch and try to guess what they were saying. And I just really thought it was a beautiful way to connect. So then flash forward to being a new mom, over 16 years ago. And I had heard about the concept of using sign language, as a means to communicate with pre-verbal children. That's a tongue twister to say. But, there wasn't a lot of resources in our area that could help me to learn. So I really dug into books and the internet and eventually taught myself and my daughter how to communicate, through sign language. And the payoff was huge. My daughter really took to it very early. She started signing milk. That was her first sign at 5.5 months. And by 12 months, she knew well over 100 signs, believe it or not. In fact, she signed so much that people thought that she was deaf. So as a result of being able to communicate with me so early on, her verbal language skyrocketed. So it came really quickly. By 18 months, she was speaking in full sentences, and I was just completely hooked. And so as far as me turning this into teaching, where I could teach others, for me, being a positive influence in the world is just, it's my jam. It's kind of, it's really important to me. And I saw this as a chance to share this wonderful gift with other parents and caregivers to help make their life a little easier and, above all, more fulfilling, because ultimately this is something that is supposed to help you feel more fulfilled in your caregiver role. And, parenting isn't always easy, but this is something that with a little bit of effort can really have huge impacts for families. And I've worked with hundreds of families through the years. And, I have to say it's a two-way street. They learn from me and I'm constantly learning from them. So it's pretty cool.
Oh my gosh, Shira, that is so beautiful. And to hear that, I mean, you've been fascinated by signs since you were young,
Yeah.
and then to turn it into this amazing business and how it helped your family as well. That is such a cool story.
Thanks.
Yes. And I love that, you are talking about how like it's your life mission to like bring joy and into this world. And you are like, for those watching, if you do not know Shira, she is just like the friendliest, fun person.
Oh, thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
that's where we met.
Yep.
I think we were at a networking event together, and then I
Yep.
had won a gift certificate to your
Yep.
classes. And yeah, we were both like kind of standing, networking events are so awkward. And we're just
Yes.
kind of standing there like, hi.
Yes, I was
that's
so happy
nice.
to have met you that night.
Yes, that was so fun. And then I took
Yeah.
your classes
Yeah.
and oh my gosh, loved them.
Thank you.
So for those of you watching, know that Shira is like the friendliest person on
Thank
this
you.
earth.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah. So, you talked a little bit about what got you into baby sign language. Do you want to share anything more about that? That story?
Yeah, no, it just really was a game changer for us, and not just for my husband and I, but for my kids, because they were frustrated, as all preverbal kids are. So this is something that helps you as the parent or caregiver. But also it helps your children. I think people don't realize that this is not just for you to communicate. This is for them to communicate with you, be able to say, hey, I'm thinking about something, and actually start a conversation with you. So it's pretty amazing. It's fascinating.
Yeah, that's so cool because it really kind of takes a mind shift to think like, oh, I could have a conversation with my pre-verbal child. Like
Yes.
that's fascinating.
Totally fascinating. Yeah. I often share a story about my son when we were at the mall and he saw another baby go by and the baby had a hat on. And he was, I think, 8 months old, but he looked up at me and he signed hat. And that's what I mean about, here I see kids in hats all the time. I see kids, going by all the time. And I wouldn't have thought that my 8-month-old would have recognized that. And so for him to sign hat, he initiated a conversation with me. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and a lot of times with babies in particular, like if your son was only 8 months old, like we don't realize the depth of understanding that the kids have or all these things that they're learning because they can't really communicate it with us. And so that's
Exactly.
like opening up this whole door.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Great. So, you've been working with families over the years, over a decade. What have you seen are the biggest struggles that many families experience when communicating with their babies or their pre-talking kids?
I would say the frustration over not understanding your child's nonverbal cues,
Mm,
and of course, the subsequent meltdowns that happen after that. So, it's important to remember that you are your child's most important teacher and communication model. So, your everyday interactions with your child helps to build their brain and support their communication development. And this is a really critical time, the first 2 years of your child's life, or well, the first 5 years, but especially in the first 2 years, you have to make the most of this crucial time. And so, the biggest struggles is just that frustration over, they're pointing, they're grunting. I wish I knew what they wanted.
Right. That's really stuck with me because I learned that from you, back when my son was really young about how tantrums are often caused because the kids can't communicate.
Yeah.
And that's just really stuck with me how profound that is, how frustrating that must be for the child, and how much that can open up that pathway of communication with sign language.
Yeah, for sure. And that the quote unquote terrible twos is
Hmm.
largely about communication, they autonomy and communication. So, I have things that I know that I want, and I don't have a way to really communicate that to you. So, we really lucked out, like with both our kids, we really skipped over the terrible twos. I mean, I'm in the terrible 16s right now and the terrible 12s, but but at least we can talk about it, right? So, when they were two, we had our struggles with other things, of course, but it rarely was a miscommunication breakdown, which was nice.
Yeah, wow. I feel like that is not talked about enough because parents go into this parenting journey thinking, okay, like we're going to go through that, like the terrible twos, and feeling powerless and
Yeah.
just being like, this is a developmental thing when really you can have some tools to get through it.
Right. And, parenting life hacks is all about finding all the tools in your tool chest, and sign language is just a really big tool to get you through.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, what are the biggest myths about using sign language with kids?
So the number one rumor is that if you teach them to sign, it will affect their speech development. And it's just simply not true. And years of research has disproven that myth. So with American Sign Language, which is what I teach, a simplified version of American Sign Language, you speak to your baby as you normally would, and then you just engage your hands, while you're speaking. So babies use their hands while they're continuing to work on, babbling like they normally would. They're babbling in their speech. And hearing babies hear an average of 4,500 words throughout the course of a normal day. Believe it or not, it doesn't seem possible, but we talk a lot. Yeah. So I tell parents, believe me, you're not going to be signing 4,500 words a day to the point where a baby says, wow, this thing I'm doing with my hands is so great. I don't ever have to talk again. We are biologically primed for speech for any language. And when a child can say a word clearly enough to be understood, they usually stop signing because it's easier. So I will say just something that's definitely noteworthy. Of course, there's plenty of children out there who have speech and language delays or physical barriers to being able to speak. But sign language is something that allows them to still have a voice. So it's really, truly a gift for both them and their caregivers. And I also want to mention that studies have shown that language delays are a risk factor for behavior problems in young children. So sign language can be a sanity saver for parents of children who start talking on the later side. And I mean, really, there's no downside to signing at all. It just increases the number of positive interactions and decreases the number of negative interactions. So that rumor is definitely out there floating around, but do not listen to it. Don't let that stop you from starting.
Yes, good. I'm so glad that you touched on that.
Yeah.
And, talk to us about why is it important to use sign language with kids?
So of all the things I did with my children when they were babies to try and solidify our attachment, that's like that buzzword that you're always going for, attachment parenting. The ability to communicate before they could speak was the best thing that we ever did. And like I said before, it was just a game changer. The main reason to sign is to reduce everybody's frustrations, especially when your baby cries and, you're grasping for reasons to try and calm them down. And in doing that, in reducing their frustrations, what most people don't realize is that by signing, you're offering the biggest benefit of all, which is boosting your bond. And therefore, again, like I said, creating a stronger attachment, and you're creating greater emotional intelligence. So, and long term, I mean, that if you think about it, if you're solidifying your bond from an early age, it's got a lot of long-term benefits too. So this concept of baby sign language has been around for a while. So researchers they've followed kids for like 25 years now, who started signing as babies. And they found that in many cases, the parents and children continue to have a greater bond and a sense of communication, which of course, that makes perfect sense. So, if you have a great early start to communication, it just sort of sets the stage for communication for the rest of their life. And then, another thing is, as far as when your baby first starts talking, babbling and then talking, it's really simple words, like one word things: mama, dada, doggy, nana for banana, nana. You remember that one? Nana. And when you teach them sign language, you just teach them even more words, more vocabulary. And with the bonus of finding things that are more helpful for you as the caregiver, like milk, more, eat, hurt, help, change the diaper, all done, that kind of thing. So, this just, again, like we talked about, eliminates a potential opportunity for a temper tantrum based on a communication disconnect.
Yes, right. And that's so interesting because, that reminds me of when we were teaching my son sign language and how you're focusing your words on the child to say like milk, and you repeat it over and over. So like that's helping them to understand the sign, but then also to learn the language because they're
Exactly.
like continually repeating it and like putting emphasis on that one word.
And you
So
know what my son's first word was?
what was that?
Milk.
Yeah.
It wasn't mama or dada, it was milk. Because guess what word he heard the most? Because when you work on signing, just like you said, you
Hmm.
say the word over and over again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And I'll say as well, like on a practical level, like my kids are now like they're 4 and 2 and they're both like really good
I can't
vocabulary.
believe
Isn't that wild?
that.
But like if I have food in my mouth or I'm brushing my teeth or for some reason like I can't say something and they are like tugging at my leg or doing something, I'll say like all done or thank you. I'll use that simple sign language and that's like such a great tool to
It
have at
it
this
really
point.
is. I mean, even in my family with my kids who are, much bigger, we still will use it from time to time exactly for that reason when we can't talk. Like
Mhm.
when we were at the beach, my kids and I were way down by the water and my husband was further up on the sand and they were hungry and they're like, bring us a snack. So I'm going, and bring the camera too. So it's pretty funny.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And I see Alessa, she has a question for you. She says she has a year-and-a-half-year-old. Is it harder to start later in your child's life?
No, it's not. So what I recommend for people that are watching this that have a really young baby, 6 months, something like that, I say, great, get started.
Mhm.
Don't wait until there's a communication problem. But if you're, just kind of getting around to signing, it's easier actually the older they are because they understand the world a little bit more and they understand language more. So kids that are a little bit older tend to catch on much quicker than younger kids. So again, if you're watching this and you have a young one, don't wait because then you'll get started earlier. But definitely it's not an issue if you have an 18 to 24-month old and you're just starting to sign. In my classes, back when we were in class, I had a lot of kids just joining my classes in that 18-month range, and they did wonderful. They picked it up really quickly.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking that, Alessa. I'm sure a lot of people are wondering that. So then, Shira, what are the biggest mistakes that you see people and families making when they start to use sign language with their kids?
So I would say a broad answer to this is giving up too early, especially
Mm.
like we just talked about for the families that start when their kids are really young.
Mhm.
Sometimes it takes a few months to stick. So, don't give up too early. Try not to compare your child with other children who may be more fluently signing. And then another mistake that people make is just not being consistent enough. So obviously, we learn things through repetition, especially kids. So just trying to be as consistent as you can without making yourself crazy. This is not meant to make yourself crazy, but just trying to have it in your mind and remember to use the signs. And then I would say a more specific answer would be as far as the number of signs, not teaching enough signs. So you want to teach enough to find one that sticks. So you don't want to just sign milk and more. You want to sign, a handful of them. And on the flip side, teaching too many signs. So you're not trying to break a Guinness record. Too many signs can lead to confusion, unless, of course, you are in a deaf household, in which case you can't have enough words, right? Enough signs. So if you're not, though, if you're a hearing family, focus on words and signs that are relative to the immediate needs of your child. Practical concepts like food or basic needs like more or hurt. But then don't forget to have some fun by including your child's favorite objects and activities.
I love that. And I love, having taken your classes, that's what you focus on. Like you teach quite a few signs in each class, but they're like topic specific. So foods or animals or, vehicles and things like that. And so that really helps for things to stick. And then you can see like, oh yeah, I could use like those signs out of all of these food signs that we learned. Those like will be ones that I'll really focus on
Yeah,
with our family.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, for families who have young children who want to be helping with communication, to have that early bond and to help avoid the terrible twos, what can be done to get started baby sign language? And how can people find you and more about what you offer?
Okay, yeah. So, like I said, if possible, start by signing early. Start introducing signs as soon as your baby starts to show frustration in trying to communicate with you. And typically it's between 6 to 9 months of age.
Mm-hmm.
You can certainly start earlier as long as you have a realistic expectation that it could take several months for your child to start signing back. And is it Alyssa? Like Alyssa, I think that was her name.
Alexa, yeah.
That it's totally fine to start a little bit later too. And then start simple, like we talked about. So be sure to follow their gaze and help them to label things that interest them. And so you'll notice when you spend time with your child that they'll gaze at something before they have words. They'll stare at something and then they could look at you, and they'll look at the object again and look at you. And that's their way of saying, like, what is that? If they're not quite at the point and grunt phase yet. So, follow their gaze, help them label things that interest them. And this is all part of the bonding process. It helps you as a caregiver to, be more present in your child's world. And then, when you're first starting off, speak and sign at the same time. Always speak the word out loud. You want to make sure that your baby connects the sign to the spoken word. And be consistent and repetitive. Like we talked about, repetition is the key to learning any language. And if possible, if you live with other people, if you can get the whole family involved, the more people who sign with your child, the faster they'll catch on. So, this includes grandparents and nannies and siblings and so on. And, their ability to communicate with their closest caregivers makes them happy. And I will say on the flip side, that they expect all the people that take care of them to understand. So, there was times that my mom would come and visit and my kids would sign to her and she'd be like, I don't understand. And that would frustrate them.
Right.
And then the last thing I'll say is sign up for a class. If you want to stick with it, going to a weekly class, and in this case right now, they would all be virtual, will just kind of remind you to keep signing. And I'm sorry, my dog sees a squirrel and is racing back and forth behind me. So I hope that's not distracting. Going to a weekly class is just going to remind you to keep signing and teaching you new signs, to use each week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And so, yeah, where can we find your classes to sign up for them right now?
So, with my Tiny Talkers program, I just really strive to make learning sign language easier by, providing parents and caregivers with all the information that they need to be successful. So I have a beginner's class. It's called Baby Sign Language 101. It's a parent caregiver workshop. And I try to include the word caregiver as much as possible when I'm talking about that, because I have a lot of grandparents that are helping to raise kids too, and so I have a lot of grandparents that take the class. It's a standalone 2-ish hour workshop. And that is available as a webcast online. You can find that on my website. And then the classes that I have that are, so the webcast is for you, the adult. It's where I'm just really able to just give you all the good information. The classes that I have for kids are designed to educate through fun and interaction. For Sign, Sing, and Play, that's the class that's ages 9 months and up. And when it's online, it really doesn't matter. I have 4 and 5 month olds taking that class. And each class corresponds with a specific area of daily life. So trying to bring together relevant signing education with a lot of music and a lot of movement and dancing to kind of fully engage the learning process for your child. And then a lot of people don't realize that I actually have a preschool class, and that's called Music, Movement, and Signing. It's for ages 2 to 5. And this is for those kids that are wanting to dive a little bit deeper into the signing. So we work on colors and the alphabet and days of the week. We tell stories and just generally get really goofy in that class while singing and dancing and hearing stories and felt board stories, all while learning sign language. So it's a really lively, interactive class.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yes, and I can absolutely attest to how fun the classes are. Shira just makes them really interactive. Of course, she's teaching us parents, but then she's interacting with the kids and helping them to have a really fun time and learn as well. So they're fantastic. And I'll say, I remember picking up like a book about baby sign language. And I was so overwhelmed. I'm like, this is all like great information. They had the pictures, of course, but I'm like, I can't, and it was a thick book, right? Because it had so many signs. And I was just totally overwhelmed. And I think, I'd got it at the library or something and I returned it. But your classes make it so easy and so accessible. And it's just like, what I was saying, how, you have those themes every week, which that in of itself makes it really easy. And then, you're helping us to figure out ways to remember the signs, and you're giving a wide amount of signs, but you can figure out like which ones feel most comfortable to you, or, that you're connecting with most, that would work most in your family. And you're giving the tips of, this is what I loved too, is that for certain signs, you would say, well, this is the sign, but some kids, because they're, I think maybe they were like 8 months old or something, pretty young, they might do it this way.
Yeah.
And things like that.
To know that the way your child is going to sign back to you is going to look a lot different. And it helps to have that feedback of, it could look like banana. That's a hard sign. It could look like this. Right. It could look like this. It could look like this, which I've seen all those variations. So yeah, I'm glad you found that helpful.
Yes. So that's really fantastic, and why it's so beneficial to take classes, because you know all those little tools that just getting a book is not going to teach you at all. So yeah. Well, thank you so much, Shira. This was just really fantastic information.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I hope everybody learned a little something. And yeah, it's great.
Great. Well, I will link your website here in the comments for people to reach out to you and sign up for your classes. And thank you so much.
Yeah. And as far as my online classes, it's just reach out to me if you want to know how to watch them. Since this is sort of a temporary thing, it's not all up to date on my website. So yeah, there's some info there, but just the easiest way is just to reach out to me and I'll get you more information.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, great. Thank you, Shira. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.